Hey girl, my name is Anel. Welcome to the Brave in Her podcast, where we inspire, empower, and motivate by sharing our stories of bravery. I strongly believe that by sharing our stories, we open ourselves to healing, but also serve to give hope and inspiration to those who are dealing with a tough situation. We will talk about all topics under the sun. Now let's hear your stories of bravery. Hi, everyone. Thank you for being here today in today's podcast. In today's podcast, we're going to be talking about a topic that is very dear to me, which is anxiety. Especially right now, we're dealing with so much anxiety, so much uncertainty. But in today's podcast, we have Kim Trevino from Las Narradoras. And she's here to talk to us about her story on dealing with anxiety. Hi, Kim. How are you?
Hi, Anel. I'm doing good. How are you?
I'm good. So do you want to tell us a little bit about your story on dealing with anxiety?
Yeah, it's a long story, but I mean, I feel I'm 34 years old, and it's taken me kind of most of my life journey to figure out and understand my anxiety, where it comes from, what triggers it, and how to manage it as best as I can. So in all of that work that I've done, individually and through therapy, of course, I realized that I most likely have had anxiety since I was at least 4 years old. So that's, most of my life, 30 years of my life. And it's something that I obviously did not know how to identify, because anxiety and mental health was never really discussed in my family and in the community that I was from. So I didn't know what anxiety was. I didn't know what I was feeling was called anxiety until many years later, until I left Texas, which is where I'm from, and then moved to Vegas. So, yeah.
Right. I feel like many people have this misconception about anxiety. They think it's just those people who are always scared and, just afraid of doing certain things, and that, that's anxiety. But anxiety actually, according to anxiety.org, it says anxiety is a reaction to situations perceived as stressful or dangerous. So it could be different things. We were talking about before recording this podcast, and just anxiety could just have so many, I guess, roots. It could, be just stressful situations, a buildup of stressful situations. It could be that you're dealing with health issues, which is in my case that I've dealt with health issues since I was born. So that's causing me anxiety. It could be just different things manifesting in different ways, such as in OCD, post-traumatic disorder, generalized anxiety disorder, and social anxiety. And there's so many more other types of anxiety. Do you know which type of anxiety do you have?
Yeah, I was officially diagnosed, if you will. Gosh, I feel like that was, my sense of time is so often during this pandemic. So I'm like, where am I? That was maybe like 6 or 7 years ago that a professional diagnosed me officially with generalized anxiety disorder and slight depression. And so that was because I took a bunch of tests and filled out a bunch of questions, and it was an intake, if you will, on my mental health, and just talking to a psychologist, she was able to determine that, I have generalized anxiety disorder, and it could be really, really high. And that comes with depression. But my depression, thankfully, is more low. Anxiety is usually like 95% of my life, and then depression will be that 5. I was officially diagnosed with generalized anxiety disorder about 6 or 7 years ago. And the therapist or psychologist was able to confirm that that also came with a small bout of depression, which I kind of had a sense of anyway, because sometimes out of the blue, I would just feel depressed. And, everyone in my life would be like, you have a perfect life. You have a job and you're beautiful and you have a wonderful man and you have a nice house and you don't have to worry about anything. You have, a roof over your head and running and all those things that I obviously was aware that I had and was always grateful for. But, what a lot of people don't understand about anxiety, mental health, depression, all of it is that you can have the perfect life to the outside world, but that has nothing to do with how you feel on the inside in your brain. And so, for me, it was more, trying to figure out how to manage my anxiety. And then, of course, since then, and my doctor then told me also, I definitely have hypochondria, which they've now termed health anxiety, which my health anxiety is probably the worst part of my anxiety for sure. And some OCD. I have it
all. So what are your symptoms? Like how did you realize that, there's something wrong, not necessarily wrong, but, it's time for me to get this checked because it's not normal.
Yeah. Like the term normal to me is like, I have a love-hate relationship with it because I don't feel like anything is normal in life.
Right.
But when it comes to mental health in my brain and my body, even, I can say this isn't a normal thing. This isn't okay, right? Like
right.
To feel this way all the time, that's not okay. There's something that's not working, right? And I've always felt like that. I can go back to like, God, when I was a child and I could, if we were going on like a family vacation and we would have to like leave the comfort of our home and go somewhere, I've always had a sensitive stomach, and my mom would just attribute it to like me being silly or me trying to like cause a scene or something like that. When now looking back, I can say, well, I was just anxious.
Yes.
I was having probably like an anxiety attack and didn't know that was happening because I didn't have those tools. But what shows up for me, how anxiety shows up for me most in my body is through like gastrointestinal problems. So digestive problems, I've had every test under the book, and I've tried to figure out like why my stomach doesn't work, and I've tried every like diet, and I've exercised and plan, and nothing works because at least I'm like telling myself, because it's not really food that is the culprit. It's perhaps something that's around me, like my environment or how I'm feeling in the moment, right? So that's usually, my stomach is usually like a telltale sign, unless I ate something that made me sick, right, that something is not right. And usually I can be like, oh yeah, I was like stressed out like an hour ago or yesterday, that thing that bothered me, like it's obviously festering in me still, if that makes sense.
Yes, that makes perfect sense. I'm glad that you're, brave enough to say that, that's your symptom, because many people think it's just, like fast heart rate or, your normal. I'm like, okay, I'm not going to say normal. I'm going to say you're like, I guess, popular symptoms. But many people don't know that also having stomach problems could be a symptom of anxiety. And there's like a whole list of symptoms of anxiety, like OCD, is one of them, and people don't realize that that is how anxiety can manifest too. For me, it's the same thing. For me, I've always had like stomach issues, but I always thought that it was because my medication. I'm a kidney transplant recipient, so I always thought it was a medication. But now that you're talking about that you're also suffering that way, so now it makes me think that maybe it is my anxiety.
Well, and like I've taken so many like, do you have anxiety test? And what kind of symptoms do you? I've taken all those tests and I've checked off many of them. The only like digestive issues, like heat fluctuations or temperature fluctuations, I'll get really, really hot and I'll like I know that's when I'm about to have a panic or an anxiety attack because I could feel like it's like fire is going up into my throat and all
Yes.
my chest gets heavy, like really, really hot. And I'm like, oh my gosh. And then now because of this pandemic, I'm like, oh my gosh, you have a fever? Let me go take my temperature, which
Yes.
ends my OCD thinking and my obsessive compulsive thinking. And, I'll get like cold. My temperature, my temperature in my body is something new to me that happened. It's been happening for the past maybe couple years, but I'll get like really hot or I'll get really cold. My hands would get like super cold. My feet will get cold. And, I'll just start to feel like sick. And so anxiety is tricky because it really does manifest. It feels like, oh my God, do I have the flu? These are COVID symptoms. These are also, normal
Yes.
cold symptoms. And, oh, I have a headache now. And, oh, my back hurts. Like, my heart is racing. I can't breathe. Like, anxiety shows up in so many ways.
Yes. Yes. Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, for me, it's also the same thing, like the temperature change where, all of a sudden, like my hands are super cold or like are sweaty. And
Clammy.
yeah. And
Yeah.
then my heart is racing. Luckily, I haven't felt like um, heart palpitations lately, but in 2017 and 2018, where I was having a lot of health issues, that's one of the things that I was having a lot. And often I felt like I was having a heart attack. And
Yeah.
I ended up in the emergency room so many times, and they did all the tests
Yep.
possible, and nothing, absolutely nothing was wrong with my heart.
Yeah.
Everything was all anxiety.
I'm still paying off those bills, girl. Really, like the and I used to feel ashamed and embarrassed by it, but this is why this conversation and why mental health should be talked about so much more is that people think that we're trying like people that have anxiety, in particular anxiety, because there's no real root cause. That it's just in our head. We're making the things up. We're overreacting. We need attention. Blah blah blah. Oh, I don't know
Yes.
how many doctors have just blown me off, and this is a problem in our healthcare system too, with prejudices towards women in general. That oftentimes women aren't taken seriously in a doctor's visit because it always goes back to, well, do you suffer from anxiety? Well, yeah, we all suffer from anxiety. Oh, well, it's probably your anxiety and stress. Let me give you an antidepressant. And I'm like, no, I'm in pain.
Yes.
No, this is how I'm feeling. No, my heart feels like it's going to stop. So even if it's nothing, check it because that's why
Yes.
you're a doctor. So yeah, I feel your pain. I've been in the ER 3 times this year already, and 2 of them were legit. The third one was also legit because it's helped me get to the place that I need to get to with my health for an upcoming procedure that I'm having. So that's good. But the first 2 were because I had a kidney stone, and I
Oh,
never
oh my
kidney
gosh. That is painful.
the worst. And I was like, oh my gosh. And then my doctors, of course, like could see my chart and they're like, well, are you feeling anxious today? I'm like, yes, I'm feeling anxious. Something feels like it's like ripping through my like body. Oh
Yes.
yeah, you have a kidney stone. I'm like, ugh. It sounds sick to say, but I was so relieved to hear that I had a kidney stone. and not hear, oh, it's just your anxiety. Do some meditation. Do
Oh
some
my
meditation
God.
practices. So yeah.
Yeah, that is so painful. I think that's like one of the like most painful things you can go through. It's having a kidney stone.
That's what they
Yeah.
say, and it was not fun.
Yeah, I have a couple, and
Oh yeah, you would
yes,
know. You would
yes.
know.
Um, so what are the things that you do to cope with anxiety?
Um, I think it just that is a great question because that's all constantly changing and it's changing based on how I'm changing or growing or where I'm currently at. So honestly, I'm super imperfect when my anxiety is when my anxiety is really high. That's when I start to seek into a depression. And when I start to seek into a depression, I really don't care about. I mean, I can do my job. I can get up, go to work, all that stuff. But I'm like, it's like because I'm a zombie. I'm just like doing something out of routine, and I'm doing it, and then I just don't. I feel numb, and it's called. My therapist now has said, it's like dissociative disorder. You detach yourself from things, so you don't feel anything. You're numb to it,
Right.
and that's not a good thing. So yeah, I mean, there are times when I do feel numb to stuff, and I don't have any coping skills. I just have to tell myself, I gotta let this ride. It's gonna be fine. I'm okay, but I have to let myself go through that instead of trying to like fix it and be like, oh no, don't feel this way. I have to just let myself feel that way because then I learn more. But when I'm dealing with anxiety daily on a day-to-day basis, I really try to stop and remember how to breathe and breathe properly. Because I don't know how to breathe properly, and I think a lot of people probably aren't aware of how to properly breathe. And I have to. That's something that really helps to ground me. And one of the methods that I've learned, and I don't know where I learned it from, but was to when I'm feeling super anxious, and that's usually when my hands start to shake, and I just feel like, oh my gosh, like sweaty, like I feel doom. I have to say, okay, like just start naming everything that you see in your surrounding area. So I'm like, okay, there's a plant. There's my little stuffed animal dog. There are my books. Like I start to name things that are real in my life. And then that takes me out of the non-reality part that my brain is living in and helps me get back to like the reality that actually is by just being like, okay, there's a lamp, there's that, because then you're tricking your mind and it's thinking about something else.
Yeah, you're distracting your mind from whatever panic is going through, focusing on something else. Yeah, that's
Yeah.
helpful. Also, I think that's very important. Like you said, the breathing. Remember to breathe and taking deep breaths. That will calm your body down. And if you're having your heart racing, it will also bring down your heart rate as well.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And like it's a never ending love story with my anxiety because I can it'll always be I'll always have it. It
Right.
doesn't I mean it doesn't just go away. It's just how you learn to manage it, right? You and those and your management of anxiety ebbs and flows all the time too. And so I think it's important to remind yourself, people who suffer from any kind of mental illness, especially anxiety, is that you're doing the best you can with where you are. And so
I
today,
think that's key. That's key.
yeah,
What you just said right there. I think that's very, very important to remember that you're just doing the best you can. And, don't worry about meeting anyone else's expectations. You just do you. And
yeah,
whatever you can, that's the best you can. And yeah, I think that's
yeah. I
great.
mean, we're living through a pandemic, something that our country in particular, but the world has not seen in over a century, right? More than a century ago, we were hit with the Spanish pandemic, the Spanish influenza, and that was disastrous. But that was in like 1918. Medicine was not
Yeah.
even close to what it is now. And people managed and they got through it. And I think people who have any form of mental health, struggles need to be gentle with themselves, their hearts, their minds, because, this pandemic is triggering for a lot of people. And
Yes.
it's uncertainty. And I think people with anxiety, we need to have certainty.
Right.
We need to have certainty. I need to and we're usually very organized. We're planners. We have to have a plan. And even if I'm doing nothing for the weekend and I'm going to go pick up a curbside thing. I'm going to go pick up that curbside at this time. And then I'm going to go do this. I'll put it all together.
Yes.
Because my brain needs that. I can't have chaos.
Right.
I can't have disorder. And so this time during this pandemic, it's there's nothing I can do. No, absolutely nothing I can do to fix the situation. I can only do my part, and I'm doing my part, and that's the best that I can do, Kim. And that's okay. So, and because we're living through a pandemic and there's so much uncertainty and sadness and everything that comes with this, frustration, it's okay if I feel sad today.
Right.
It's okay if I don't want to talk to anyone. I could be with myself. That's okay. It's okay if I eat a bag of hot Cheetos because that makes me feel good. A bag of hot Cheetos every day? Probably not. But today I will. So,
Right. And just to add to that, in the beginning of the pandemic and from my experience, I was having a lot of anxiety, every day, bad anxiety, but because I was listening to the news all day.
Yep.
And there was no need for that. Once I stopped watching the news so often, now I think I probably watch it once a week. But I had to change my mindset to not focus on the bad and instead focus on the good, like creating this podcast. So I just did a mind switch, but also right now going through this pandemic, it's very, very important to take care of ourselves, dealing with anxiety or not, having some self-care, keep your body moving. A lot of us are at home and not going to work and not seeing other people like we are used to. So taking care of our mental health and just taking a day for ourselves, taking a hot bath or going for a run, going for a walk, doing something for ourselves that makes us happy and taking care of our mental health. It's very important right now. Totally. Extremely important.
Extremely, and for those who are lucky and privileged, and that includes me, that to have jobs that are, to have a job in general, right? Or to have a job that pays for healthcare, pay time off, vacation, sick time, use it. Yes. Use it. I mean, especially if you're working from home, but in general, use it now more than ever. Use it. And I used to feel guilty because I talked about this in my roundtable just a few nights ago too. Which
was amazing. And if
thank you.
Just a little plug-in. Go check out her Instagram and try to join the next one because it was amazing.
Thank you. Yes, it's called Las Nadadoras, and it's a baby project. So I'm just getting, its feet off the ground. But yes, please follow me. That'd be great. Thank you, Anna. You're so sweet. Take that time. And even if you are going to feel guilty about it, I mean, it's there. Use it.
Right. It's there for us to use it.
You get in trouble for using sick time or vacation time just because you're working from home or in general. So use it. And if you're going to use it to have a mental health day, and not even go to a doctor, use it, because our mental health should be considered, eligible for a sick day, because duh.
Right.
Duh. I
Yes.
mean, no one can function if they're having a panic attack at work. I've had several when I was in the office, and that throws my entire day off, and they're exhausting.
Yes.
And so, yeah.
It could be also like a domino effect, right? If you're
Yep.
not mentally stable, I guess, if you're suffering from like a mental illness, or just like anxiety, it could just be a domino effect where like your body starts hurting, and something it's going wrong, and you just need to take care of your mental health.
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
a good example of that honestly this pandemic has blessed me with, and I say that lightly because it's been a hard year for everyone. But I still try to find things that I'm grateful for and blessed for. I think we all have to, and it doesn't have to be a religious thing at all. But if we can find even one thing, like, oh, I'm just so grateful that I woke up today. That's like usually my first thing that I say, right? Thank you, lungs, for working. And that helps with my anxiety too, to go back just briefly. Usually I do this when I'm in the shower, kind of to like wind down from the day, is I'll go through my entire body and say like, thank you, brain, for working. Thank you, senses, for working. Thank you, lungs. Thank you, heart. Thank you, organs. Like, thanks for my healing, because I feel like I have to show love to my body the most, because anxiety, mental health, illness wreaks havoc on the body so much, and there's still so much people are trying to figure out as to how and why.
Yes.
Yeah.
What would you like to tell that person that is dealing with anxiety right now?
Ooh, good question. It's funny because I'm very candid about my mental health issues. I'm very candid in general, and so I feel like I have to be, because of the things that go on in my brain. If I hold everything in, that is something people don't want to see, because it is just not. It's dramatic, and it's very unhealthy, and it's very dark, and I don't like to go there. So I like to talk about it, because I get that darkness out of me. And I'm usually, the majority of people in my life do not actually suffer from anxiety as a mental health illness. They have anxiety from time to time. They have stressors, but they're not anxious. They're able to really kind of cope, deal with stuff, move on. They have bouts of anxiety or stress like everyone else does, but they're not like suffering from it, right? Like a lot of us are. So what I would say to people suffering from anxiety now is, one, the biggest lesson I've learned is to make friends with your anxiety. That sounds really weird, because I don't like to use the word hate, because that's such a strong word. But there have been moments in my life where I'm like, I hate my anxiety. I hate this. I hate this about me. It's the worst thing, which is not good for your anxiety or self-esteem. But then, through therapy and through like reading and researching, one, you're not alone. Anxiety affects over 40 million people in the United States alone. And so you're not alone in your anxiety mind. But make friends with it. Don't try to fight your anxiety. If you try to fight it, I'm telling you now, it's just not a recipe for disaster, because it's going to kick your ass or butt. Sorry, I don't know if I could use that word, but it's gonna fight you back at full force, and it's oftentimes gonna beat you, because it wants to beat you, right? It's the part of your brain that's the ego, and it's like, no, like, I want to win. So make friends with it, honor it, accept it, love it, nourish it. Don't feed your anxiety, but just acknowledge that it's there and say, okay, anxiety, you're showing up today. Call it whatever you want to call it. Call it your worst enemy, or you can call it something you love, or you can call it a silly name or nothing. I just say, okay, anxiety, I see you. I feel you today. I understand. I get it. I know you're here. Like, because I used to fight it. I wanted to just stop it. I wanted to do everything possible to just fix it and let it go away. And so that it wouldn't bother me anymore, but I couldn't because I can't.
Right.
And so when I started to just acknowledge that, okay, I'm anxious today. That meeting really bothered me. How that person spoke to me affected me because it reminded me of the way this person treated me like 10 years ago. Like, I talk out loud when I'm in my house, because if I were talking out loud to myself in public, people might look at me a little strange. But I talk out loud in my mind. Like, I have conversations with it. And I think that that's what I would say. Like, really get to know your anxiety and make it your best friend so that you aren't trying to erase it from your life or hate it, but so that you can understand it and manage it better.
Right. That's one of the, I guess, suggestions or coping mechanisms that the therapist also suggested to me is talk to it and say, I know, like you're saying, like, I know you're here, but you're not real.
Yeah.
Whatever you're thinking is not real. It's just anxiety. And
Yeah.
and just try to breathe. Deep breaths.
Deep breaths. Another thing I like to say when I'm in a particularly like spunky mood is I just like, I don't know if I can say a bad word on this podcast, but I'll just be like, not today, B. Not
Yes.
today. Not today. Nope. I'm in a good mood. I'm happy. Not today. Nope. Don't have energy for you. And then it goes away.
Right, because you're not feeding it.
Right? Yeah. I'm acknowledging it.
Right.
I'm giving it the acknowledgement that it craves. I'm talking about it as if it's a person, because to me, it is a different person. It's a different part of my psyche. And so, yeah, as long as I acknowledge it, I feel like I can control it a lot better, manage it better. But usually I'm like, not today, B. Not today. I don't got time for you. I got to go into a meeting.
Yes.
See ya.
Too busy to stress or have anxiety today.
Yeah.
Well, any last thing that you want to say?
Well, thank you so much for inviting me and including me on this podcast. I'm so excited for your first episode to come out. Everyone, go follow the Brave and Her podcast on Instagram. I believe that's your handle.
The Brave and Her, yes.
The Brave and Her. And yeah, thank you so much. I mean, I think I love having conversations about mental health with people who also struggle with their own, illnesses. And it took me a long time to realize that, just because I have mental health illnesses, doesn't mean that I'm actually sick or that something is wrong with me, that I need to fix it. And so I think that would be the last thing, is the misconception of the term illness. That's what that means, is there's something wrong, you need to fix it, something's not working. And even though mental health, things aren't working, like, it doesn't make you sick, it doesn't make you crazy, it doesn't mean you're broken. It just means you have a little extra special, fire inside of you, and that makes you I feel too, people who have anxiety, I will say this lastly, are usually the most empathetic people I've ever known and met in my life. And empathy is something that a lot of people are lacking, and that this country lacks often. And so the next time you talk to someone who has anxiety, whether it be a loved one or a friend or a colleague or a stranger, just say, thank you for being brave. thank you for putting up the fight that you put up every day of your life, because, I think the people that struggle the most are the strongest people, and I think they're able to love the hardest too.
Yes, I completely agree with what you just said. Well, thank you so much for being brave and sharing your story.
Thank you, Janelle.
Thank you. Thank you so much for listening. I hope this episode inspired you. If you like this podcast, please share on social media and tag me on Instagram @TheBraveandHer. I would love to hear your stories of bravery.